Hey guys, it's Jake here at Canadian Cutting Edge, and welcome to my first Eafengrow review for 2019. This is the EF36. It comes in this sort of sandy, color, as well as in black. I got mine from Fast Tech, under 17 US dollars. I think it's a 16, what is it? 16.92. So basically almost 17 US dollars. And it's an interesting little knife, and I think you might, well, not little, but it does have some, well, it's big in some ways and small in some ways, and we're going to talk about that when we get to the full review, coming at you right now. So here we go. What do we have? Well, it says here that the steel is D2. I've done some of my non-scientific, but pretty good testing, I think. I believe it might be D2, but it might not be. It might just be, a stainless steel. It feels like it might be a little bit too soft to be real D2. I haven't resharpened it, but I used it for a while, and I think it was getting dull a little more quickly than D2 does. I hate to say it, I think it might be 8CR13 MOV or something like that. Better than the really cheap steels, but not, I just don't think it's quite D2. Sorry, Eafengrow. If you're going to be using D2, make sure that it tests like D2. Maybe it wasn't heat treated properly or something. I don't know. It's a pretty good steel. It cuts fairly well. It keeps an edge fairly well. Not quite as good as D2 should. We've got a flipper tab, and we've got a hole here. It's not a thumb stud knife. What these things are is that's the stop pin. Then it stops right in there, like that. And when you go to close the knife, it stops touching right there. So that's the stop pin. We've got a decent detent on it. It holds the knife closed fairly well. So you can see that. You might have even heard that little bit of a click. The flipper tab is leaned forward a little bit. It's designed for light switch method. If you just push straight down, you're not going to get anywhere because it's slightly forward of the center of the pivot. So light switch method works just fine. We've got a flat grind, so that's a saber grind, a fairly high flat grind. It's almost 2 centimeters, around 3/4 of an inch from the time it gets to the cutting edge to the full thickness of the blade. So that's quite good. It does slice very well, and it's got decent puncturing capability with that tip. It's got a fairly strong tip to it. A bit of a swedge up here, and of course, it's a drop point. This forward section here, I don't call that a forward choil. You put your finger up there, and you're going to end up nicking the side of your finger. So that's basically a big sharpener's choil. And then you've got, the basically just barely rounded off edges everywhere, like on the flipper tab and up here. And I wish they would have chamfered the edges of this flipper tab a bit. It does get a little hot in the hand right there sometimes during use. More so in my right hand than in my left. Maybe it just has to do with the way I hold it, or maybe my finger is a little more sensitive still from that spot where I cut it a little bit over a year ago when I sliced the side of my finger off right there. In a mistake that is 100% my own fault and not a blade's fault at all. Back to the knife. And then we've got a G10 handle scale. We've got steel liners that are also stone washed. Oh, by the way, I didn't say this is stone washed. And they've got a bit of a pattern on them here. Let's get a little close-up picture here. There you go. You can see the milling on the handle scales there. So we've got vertical milling and horizontal milling. 4 vertical lines and 3 horizontal ones. Other than that, it's just a flat texture on the handle. And the corners are just barely chamfered ever so slightly. And then where the lines were milled out, there's no chamfering at all. So those edges there are a little bit sharp. So it does get a little bit hot in the hand over extended use. One of the things that I really like about this knife is all the screws, except for the 2 on the pocket clip, are flush. And so, they're flush to the side of the knife. We've got a pivot pin I haven't taken it apart yet, but I'll show you video of me taking it apart in just a few seconds. I believe it's a fixed pivot so that it's not going to slide. You only have this one Torx screw right here to take it apart, and then the Torx screws on the handle here. And then a little lanyard hole that is, elongated like that. Pocket clip is very nice. You've got about a centimeter of the knife, less than half an inch sticking out of your pocket when you're using it. And if we zoom in a little bit, there you can see how that pocket clip is shaped, and it holds on to the pants very well. And it's got enough of an uplift there that it slides in your pants fairly well. And since this low spot here meets up with one of the milled lines in the G10 here, it really does hold on fairly well. This knife is not going to come out of your pocket unless you want it to, but that doesn't mean it's overly difficult to take out of your pocket. It actually comes out fairly well. The open pillar construction here, we've got the hourglass shaped pillars right here. 2 of them back there, that's quite nice. The lockup is quite good. Lockup is solid. No blade play side to side, up and down from the factory. I've made 0 adjustments to the pivot on this knife. We've got ball bearings, steel ball bearings in there. And lockup is almost at the midway point right there. And I'll give you a close-up shot of that. So it's a good solid engagement with the lockup, and there still is a fair bit of room for it to wear across. I like it to be a little bit earlier. I like it to be lockup. I like lockup right there on a brand new knife, but this one is, just a little bit further across. Not a big problem at all. You've got just a little bit of jimping back here on the handle and none anywhere else on this knife. So now let's take this thing apart and I'll show you the insides of it. A very slight design flaw is that I had to take the pocket clip all the way off in order to get that screw out. I could have taken it apart on the other side, but that side doesn't have the screwdriver to take it, the screw head to take out. So I like to do my screws all on one side. Since I had to do it on the other side for the pivot, I figured I'd do those as well. And that's when I found that out. No big deal. And yes, it's got that D-shaped hole here. So that captured pin right there. I'm not sure if I can get a good close-up of this. There you go. You can see the flat side there on that screw that holds it. Detent hole, quite nice. The detent is stainless steel, the detent ball, and the pivot screws are stainless steel as well. So that's what it looks like on the inside. Skeletonization would have helped the weight a little bit. Not a big deal. Let's keep going. Okay, now that you've seen the insides of it, let's go over the measurements and then we'll do the pros and the cons. The cutting edge length and the blade length are identical, 8.5 centimeters, 3.35 inches. The blade thickness, they say on Fast Tech that it's 4 millimeters, but it's really 3.6 millimeters. That's about 9/64ths of an inch. How many thousandths of an inch is that? I'll put it on the screen right here. Sorry about that. The blade depth, that's this measurement. It's 3.33 centimeters. That's 1 5/16ths of an inch. The thickness of the edge behind the grind is 0.65 millimeters. That's about 3/128ths of an inch. I'm trying some fractions today for the inches instead of doing everything in decimal points. What do you think of that? Tell me in the comments below if you prefer if I do fractions or if I do the decimal measurements of the inch measurements. So I did that. The grind angle. The grind angle on this knife is 17.6 degrees on the show side, not the show side, the working side that says D2, and 17.3 degrees on the show side where they've got the EF logo. So that's more shallow than I thought it would be. And that actually does make up a little bit for how thick it is behind the grind. And, that's what made it such a good slicer. Even though it's probably not D2, it does work very, very well as a slicing machine. The rest of the measurements, the handle length here is 11.38 centimeters. That's 4.48 inches. That's 4 61/128ths of an inch. That's the finest measurement, the finest fraction I go to. I don't go to 254ths. The grip area in here is 9.43 centimeters. That's 3 and 91 128ths. See, fractions just, if you're trying to be accurate, just don't do that well. 3.71 inches. I think I'm going to keep going with decimals. The handle thickness, but I'd like to hear from you guys anyways. Handle thickness is 1.4 centimeters. That's 0.55 of an inch, or 71 128ths of an inch. Hardly anybody uses anything finer than 30 seconds. The handle depth. Handle depth this way is largest, actually right there, just after the flipper tab. 3.22 centimeters, that's 1.27 inches. That's 1 and 17/64ths. And when the blade is closed, it's largest right there. That's 3.93 centimeters, 1.55 inches. That's 1 and 38/64ths. The total length of this knife with the blade deployed is 19.88 centimeters, 7.83 inches. That's 7 and 33/64ths. I don't think I'm going to be doing those fractions anymore. I just don't think so. The price of this knife, actually no, the weight of this knife first, 170 grams, 6 ounces even. And it comes by that because when you saw the insides, remember the no skeletonizing? If they would have skeletonized this, they could have brought it down a little bit. 6 ounces for a knife like this, no problem. I don't mind carrying that all day long. How much does it cost? Well, Fast Tech is the only place I saw this, other than some of the other places like eBay and AliExpress and stuff like that, but I don't prefer those stores that much. $16.92 American, $21.15 Canadian, $21.99 Australian. In euros, it's 14.38. In British pounds sterling, it's 12.69. It's 1,861 Japanese yen. So those are the currencies that Fast Tech sells in, and that's how you can buy it. There's no shipping cost for this, and I think that's to about any country in the world. I like it. Let me show you now what it looks like in the pocket, and then I'll do the pros and cons, because I forgot to show you that before. Don't put it in the pocket with the blade deployed, unless you want to cut your pants. There you go. Sits like that. Hides in the pocket quite well. Not a lot deployed, and with the stonewash here and the muted sort of sandy taupe color there. Is taupe the gray, or is that more like a pink or a purple? I don't get my colors always just right. Anyhow, you can also get it in the black, like I said before, and that fits in the pants quite well and holds on quite well, and it's not hard to grab and pull out. And you heard the snap when it released. It does hold on very, very well. Pros and cons: good action, good cutting edge. The grind is very well done, but around, if I was to resharpen this right now, I would probably resharpen it at 17.5 degrees per side, because it works well at that angle, and I don't want to take off an awful lot of steel. So when I sharpen this before, either I sell it or give it away or whatever, it's going to be at 17.5 degrees, unless the person who wants it at a different angle. Unless the person who wants it at a different angle. Good lockup, good action, solid. Like that an awful lot. A little bit hot on these corners. I like that chamfered. Actually, let's do the rest of the pros first. I like these flush screws all over the place. To me, that's a big deal. I really, really like that. And if you can do this on a knife that's under $20, they can do that on way more knives. And I wish way more manufacturers of budget knives would do that. And it's got a reasonable blade shape, good for many, many different tasks. Fairly strong tip. So the shape of the blade's good as well. Since it's a deep blade, even though it's not a full flat grind, since that's almost 2 centimeters there, like about 3/4 of an inch, that angle of the main bevel here is not so steep that it's a problem. It's a shallow enough main bevel that it's a great slicing knife. The cons: it's slightly hot in hand. That can be remedied very much easily, just by chamfering these edges. They chamfered all the edges before they milled the rest, I think. And that's why there's no chamfering here, where they They milled a little bit of a scoop here on both sides, for your index finger to wrap around. But I wish they would have chamfered all those edges a little bit more. But you can fix that with sandpaper quite quickly, especially if you've got a little Dremel. You can just take that really quickly to the edges. I do suggest you wear a dust mask because G10 and most materials that have resin in it, it's hard on your lungs. So yeah, protect your lungs when you're sanding this kind of stuff. It's funny because in my hand size is right between large and extra large. If you had extra large hands, your hands would start to come off the end. But if you have smaller medium, and I'm talking about men's sizes, then you're going to find this distance a little bit big. So the next con is it's not really made for a wide range of hand sizes. Just because of the dimensions that they decided to use on this handle, if your hands are bigger, you're going to want a longer handle. If your hands are smaller, you're going to want a more narrow, this way handle. So, you might be exception. You might have smaller hands and still want it this way. But I think in general, that's probably true of most people. So that's another con. And the last con that I want to mention is that I would like this cutting edge to have been a little bit thinner. So the main bevel here should have come to a slightly thinner cutting edge. That's a very small complaint, a small con. It actually cuts quite well the way it is right there. So there you go. Here's this drop point blade, G10, probably 8CR13 or something close to that. Looks decent. It's slightly unique having the external stop pins. And, it's a decent enough knife. Is it worth, $16.92? Yeah, it's worth $17 US all day long. So if you're interested in it, if it looks good to you and you're willing to do that tiny little bit of work here to make it a little bit more comfortable in your hand, I say go for it. If you do want to buy this, consider using my links. I've got links in the description below where I get a tiny commission if you use my link to make your purchase. The only thing I ask is, close your browser. Any pages on your browser that are open to FastTech, close everything on there, and then click on my link to open up FastTech. That way I'll get credit for it. Otherwise, if you've already got a cart with some items in it in your FastTech box, I might not get the credit for it. And I'd appreciate that very, very much. The income that I get from people using my links helps make this channel survive. Without my Patreon supporters, the generous gifts from those guys, and people using my links, this channel would be gone. So thank you to everybody who does that. Thank you to everybody who lets the advertisements play on YouTube. That helps me out as well. I get a little bit of advertising money that way, and it really does make a difference, and I thank you very much for that. So remember, guys, whenever you've got a knife, cut towards your chum, not your thumb, and not your index finger either. It's gotten quite a bit better, but there are a couple nerve endings close to the surface there, so it does give me a zing every once in a while still. It doesn't want to give me a close-up picture of that. So that's what a fairly badly cut finger looks like after a year. Not bad. Till next time, have a good one, guys. Whatever you find to do, do your best. Bye now.